Let's take this from Georgia Smith-Marr, please.
Will the Israeli government be held accountable for their crimes against Palestine?
This it takes us... All right. 60 Palestinians were killed on the 70th anniversary of the Palestinians being pushed into the Gaza Strip, and when the American embassy was being opened at the same time, and that's what the question refers to. Aditya, you start on this.
What we saw this week was a massacre akin to the Sharpeville massacre, where you had people protesting and throwing stones, and in return they were met with the fire from sniper rifles. It's horrific. You could talk about Israel, but I actually want to think for a moment about Britain and Britain's role in all of this, because Britain approves the sales of arms to the Israeli army every year. We sell them sniper rifles, just like the ones that we use upon those protesters. We sell them assault rifles, we sell them bits of helicopters, fighter jets, all the rest of it. Last year alone, we approved a sale of £200 million in arms exports. I think it's high time that we reviewed the sale of those arms, and we asked ourselves whether we should actually be using them for the sake of internal repression. Internal repression and selling arms for the sake of internal repression is banned under international guidelines.
And this would be your version of holding them accountable to stop those arms supplies?
It's something that we can do here.
All right, Dominic Raab, what do you think we can or should do, or whether anything should be done?
Well, look, first of all, I think absolutely horrific to see 58 people die and thousands lose their life because of the use of live ammunition. I used to be a lawyer, an international law of armed conflict. I worked in The Hague on war crimes. Israel has the right to defend itself, has a right to exercise self-defence, but as a matter of law and morality, it must, it must be done proportionately, and if it's under attack. And if it's
Wait
under
a minute,
attack.
let him speak.
And what the Prime Minister has said, and the
afterwards.
UK's position, is that we need an independent fact-finding inquiry. The Israelis say that these are all Hamas militants brandishing weapons, and obviously the Palestinian view is very different. All I know from my experience is that when you've got 58 dead and thousands wounded, this seems like a disproportionate response, and we need to get all the facts, and I do think it is deeply, deeply troubling, and I'm pleased the Prime Minister has called internationally for an independent fact-finding inquiry.
And how could or should the Israeli government, if you have that fact-finding inquiry, be held accountable? I mean, stopping arms sales, as Aditya mentions?
There are all sorts of mechanisms that you've got at the diplomatic level, at the sanctions level. They're not a member of the International Criminal Court, so you couldn't have people being sent there for that. But I think there's the usual mechanisms you have in this way, whether it's sanctions, whether it's diplomatic measures, and depending on what the outcome of the fact... I mean, I think you need to get to the bottom of the facts first. And find out what the truth is between the two sides of it. But it looks, on any account, to me, like a totally disproportionate use of force.
All right. The woman there in the centre, the spectacles. Yes.
Okay, I get your point. It's not like black and white, but I'm not just referring to the crimes that have happened like in the past week. I'm referring to the fact that the Israeli government keeps essentially what is kicking out Palestinian families who have lived there for over 50 years because they are taking over the land, leaving Palestinians nowhere to go. Like, it's more than just the murder, it's everything.
Bernard Hogan-Howe.
Horrific, what we all saw. We saw some parts of what happened, and that so many people died and so many people were injured. I would have liked to see the Israeli government say that they wanted to have an investigation, because I think, you know, you say on the face of it, it looks disproportionate, and they didn't say that. And I think if we'd been in this country, by now we would have decided we wanted to get to the facts. So that's really disappointing. You have to put in the mix the fact that obviously this wasn't just stone throwing, it was 40,000 people. And it is said that just, you know, a very short distance away, there were Israelis in villages who were in fear of their lives. And this was at a border. So something has got to be done to stop that sort of... I accept that some people may not find what I'm saying popular, but you've got to accept that people are going to try and protect people.
But you've been in that business as head of the Met. You've dealt with angry crowds and mobs. Do you need live ammunition to do that?
Well, you don't... You don't in this country, but we're not talking about this country. We're talking about an area where there's a terrible, terrible conflict. The major thing that does need to happen, which is what's being called for, is an independent international investigation, and the Israeli government should support that, because if there is a clear explanation for some of what happened, then they ought to be able to explain. They say that there were things happening that they had to intervene in because either firearms were involved or because people are in danger of losing their lives. So they should be able to prove that.
Okay.
But we all ought to see those facts.
You, sir, with glasses on the middle there, yes.
Actually, yesterday on Palestinian TV, one of the Palestinian Hamas leader actually admitted that 50 of the dead were Hamas members. 53. All right, 50 from Hamas, 3 from Islamic Jihad. At the end of the day, I think thank you very much for your intervention, because it's true. When you have 40,000 people amassed on the border with villages 400 meters behind you, what were the Israeli soldiers supposed to do? This was not a peaceful protest. They tried to go to the border. This is not a momentum meeting here. Everybody can think about other things, okay? I'm sorry. We allowed other opinion.
Right? Can I just add one thing, which is just that with this, there's going to be another protest apparently on the 4th of June. And if I was the Israeli military or the police, I would want more options than they clearly had on that day. They did use different options apart from lethal force, but I think they certainly need some better options than what happened on that day.
All right, and you in the third row, the woman there. Yes.
We're talking about the use of... Dominic, you said that Israel has the right to defend themselves. But how can you say killing 13 people with sniper rifles that... We have provided sniper rifles. I'm not saying the same ones. But we are providing weapons and they're killing children. How can you say that's proportionate and that's defensive?
Okay.
Well, in fairness, I didn't say that.
The man in the orange tie there, and then I'll come to you in front. Yes.
Just on a point that you said, and on a point which Mr. Chakrabarty said, how can the UK be responsible for... We ship weapons there, but are we responsible for their use? I mean, if we didn't send them there, another nation would be. And we can't be held responsible for what they're being used for. If they're being used in legitimate self-defence, right, the UK cannot be held responsible for that.
Diane Abbott. Diane Abbott.
I think that what we would all
hold on a second.
Like
Sorry, wait a minute, Dan, I'll come to you.
Yeah.
What were you saying? No, wait a minute, what were you saying?
So the border is illegal, first of all, and nobody is saying that Hamas have the right to kill people. What people are saying is that... Can you be quiet, man? Can you be quiet?
Just speak one at a time.
Can you be quiet? Men, please, be quiet, let me speak, yeah? First of all, it's an illegal border. Secondly, the Palestinian people have their poultry, their olive trees, their cattle, their children, their 14-year-old boys that wet themselves at night time, that wear nappies, because they're fighting that the IDF are going to come in and take them in the middle of the night. That land is illegal.
All right. And now yes.
What do they...
All right, well, now I'll give him a chance to reply to you.
Here's one of the real problems we have. This gentleman here is a journalist, and he stood here on national television and claimed that they were only throwing stones. They have rocket launchers. They have Kalashnikovs. No, not the babies. Excuse me. Hang on. And now you talk about proportionality. Proportionality is not, oh, they've got less weapons than we. This summer, the police were praised for shooting down 3 jihadists in a few minutes, as they should have been praised for doing. Those jihadists only had knives. The British police didn't throw down their gun and have a knife fight with them. That's not proportionality. Proportionality is using the necessary amount of force to control the situation. Their border... Thousands of people are trying to breach the border as cover for militants who have every intention, who have every intention of murdering Jews. They have posted maps of routes to kibbutzes and villages. The intention is to get into Israel and murder as many civilians as possible. Right. And anybody who thinks that they could do a better job should explain. Perhaps you could go and tell the Israelis how to do it more safely. I'm sure they would appreciate it.
Diane Abbott.
I think what we'd all like to see is peace in the region. And I would query whether this type of disproportionate use of force, and it does, on the face of it, seem disproportionate, is going to help to achieve the negotiations we want to have and peace in the region. And that's why, to know exactly what happened, why we needed independent inquiry, but it seems on the face of it like an atrocity. And let me just say one small thing about the role of Donald Trump. Because what we had was photographs of his daughter opening the new American embassy in Jerusalem, where no other European country has an embassy, side by side with photographs of dead Palestinians. I don't think that Donald Trump has played a positive role. We want an inquiry to establish the facts, but in the end, we want to move towards a peace process and peace in the region for the benefit of both Israeli children, but also for the benefit of Palestinian children.
Actually, the question was whether the Israeli government would be held accountable. And I heard you say that we can't compare this to Britain, this is a different country. Can I just remind you, we're actually talking about humans. Lives have been lost. It's sounding very similar, actually, to the conversation we were just having about Grenfell. When lives are lost, people need to be held accountable.
Camilla Cavendish, I'll come back to you, Camilla Cavendish.
Look, I think we all know that lives are being lost on both sides. And what happened on Monday was... Hang on, would you let me finish? No, I'm not talking about Monday. I'm talking about for years. I'm talking about years. We're talking about... Israel was founded, 70 years ago? For the last 20 years, we've had virtually no progress towards peace. And one of the huge mistakes I think Donald Trump has made, not only did he provoke, do something unbelievably provocative by opening that embassy in Jerusalem. He didn't even ask for anything in return. And we can talk about Britain, but the truth is, we all want peace in that region. The only country that's going to really effectively broker peace is the US. We have a president in the US who seems to have shed responsibility for that, and what he could have done, I don't think he should have opened that embassy at all. But what he could conceivably have done with an Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu who has already said he doesn't want a two-state solution, he could have forced some real concessions. He could have asked him to remove some of the settlements. He could have asked him to come to the table. And I'm unfortunately, in having failed to do that, he is leaving, I think, extremists in both Hamas and the Israeli government to continue to escalate a conflict. It's very hard to see the way out of it.
You at the very back there. All right.
Can I just say...
Yeah.
Can I just say, people like Dominic who says Israel has the right to defend itself, yes it does, but the Palestinians have a right to defend themselves, right? And you talk about selling arms to Israel. What you guys don't do with Israel is what you've done with Grenfell, just deregulate, it's just giving things that you shouldn't be giving to people. And what you're doing right now is you're actually saying it's okay to do it. You should stop the arms sales to Israel, make sure there's aid going to the children that are being shot. And I'm not being funny, these people are getting kicked out of their house. They've got no bread and water. They have to defend themselves. They need bread and water. And you keep saying it's Hamas, it's this, it's that. It's all Israel. And the first thing Netanyahu tweeted as soon as Trump was in charge, that is it, no two-state solution. Israel never wanted a two-state solution. They want an actual greater Israel project, and they don't want nothing to do with Palestinians. They want to clear them all. And it's people like you who's a disgrace to the two-state solution.
And you, sir.
I'd like to make 2 points. First of all, how can you have peace in the Middle East when one of the sides does not want to negotiate, doesn't even want to recognise the other side? And secondly, how is it that the aggressors always seem to project themselves as victims?
Bernard, you wanted to come back in.
Yeah, just, I think it was a fair challenge about, you can compare the fact that obviously people died, and that's the same wherever it happens in the world. My point is that in terms of the question I was asked, which is about how the police respond, we're different here, as it would be in America, where they have 300 million guns in society, and in Israel and the Middle East, where I'm afraid quite a lot of it is militarised already. Okay. Now, whether you like that or not, that's the situation they face. So that's why I say it's a different answer in different parts of the world. The law remains the same.